Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. We've got a really interesting topic to dig into today. You guys have sent us some amazing material, really insightful stuff, focused on staying motivated, while you're on that journey of learning English.
It's so crucial, isn't it? And something that anyone working towards any kind of big goal can relate to.
Exactly, exactly. So we thought, let's really dissect these insights. We're going to unpack them, find the real gems, and then equip you with practical, actionable strategies to make sure your English learning journey not only stays on track, but is actually, enjoyable and rewarding all along the way.
Yeah, I love that. You've sent us excerpts from Unlock Your English Potential, Stay Motivated, and Overcome Challenges. Catchy title. I like it. And it's honestly like overflowing with practical advice.
It really is.
So our aim here today is to kind of like weave through all these ideas, connect the dots for you, and give you a clear path to maintain your enthusiasm. Because let's face it, there will be challenges, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But we're going to help you navigate those and ultimately just make sure you're having a really enjoyable experience as you're learning English.
Okay, so let's just jump right into it. And the first thing that really struck me looking through all this material is just how important, how fundamental motivation really is. It's not just this like added bonus, is it? It feels like the core engine that's powering you forward, especially when, progress feels like you're wading through like thick mud sometimes.
You hit the nail on the head. Motivation really is the fuel. Without it, even if you have the best resources, the most fantastic teachers, you're not going to get very far. It's that internal drive that makes you, want to practice, that pushes you to listen carefully, to read actively, to speak, even when it feels, a little bit scary.
And it all kind of goes back to, doesn't it, that personal why? And this was something that really stood out in the material you sent over, really highlighting how important it is to pinpoint and then hold on to that reason, that initial spark that made you want to learn English in the first place. Take a moment to think about it. Is it a new career path? Maybe the thrill of traveling and really connecting with people from different cultures, being able to understand your favorite movies or TV shows without subtitles. That why, it's almost like an anchor, isn't it? Especially when things get tough.
It really is. It's that connection to your personal aspirations. It's what you come back to when the initial excitement starts to fade a little. When grammar rules feel like an impossible puzzle to solve, or when understanding native speakers, oh my gosh, feels like you're trying to understand like a completely new language. It's normal, by the way, for that initial enthusiasm to waver. I mean, we all experience that. It's natural. The book even mentions that.
That's actually reassuring to hear, because I think a lot of us probably feel that way sometimes. But then there's this really encouraging part of the material where it talks about the real possibility of you confidently using English in the future. But there's this little phrase, if you keep going. That feels pretty key, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Sustained effort. And remember, that's powered by your motivation.
Yeah.
That's what bridges the gap between like you wanting to learn, and then actually achieving fluency, feeling confident in the language. And as you said, it really is a marathon, not a sprint.
All right. So let's dive into some of these common challenges that the book highlights. I know we can all relate to these. One that really stood out to me and I think resonates with a lot of people is that lack of confidence when it comes to speaking. That fear of making mistakes, or not sounding, natural or just right.
Right. This fear of not being perfect, it's a huge hurdle. It can be paralyzing for a lot of learners. And what I really appreciate about this book is it offers some very direct advice. Speak as much as possible. It sounds simple, right? But the text suggests starting small. Have little conversations with yourself in English, practice with friends, or look for language exchange opportunities.
I like that. Kind of like dipping your toes in the water before you jump in the deep end. And it really emphasizes this idea that, mistakes, they're not failures. They're actually signs that you're actively learning.
Exactly. And the book really makes this point. Every mistake you make, it's actually giving you information, showing you where you can improve. So if you don't speak because you're afraid to make mistakes, you're actually missing out on those opportunities to learn and grow.
Right. Makes sense. Another big challenge that comes up is, Well, let's face it, English grammar, it can be a bit of a beast, can it? With all its exceptions. Just when you think you've grasped a concept, boom, there's an exception.
Oh, yeah. I think we've all been there. And what's interesting here is that the book suggests shifting your focus away from just trying to, like, memorize all these rules in isolation, like cram them in your brain. It encourages you to start looking for patterns instead. So learning grammar in context, by actually reading, listening to real English content. That's presented as a much more effective and intuitive approach.
That resonates with me. Because, yeah, it's one thing to memorize a rule, but when you actually see it in action in a real sentence, in a conversation, it just seems to stick so much better.
It makes it real.
Yeah. And then the book goes on to recommend breaking down those more complex grammar concepts, the ones that make you want to tear your hair out. Break them down into smaller, more manageable pieces.
Bite-sized pieces.
Yeah, exactly. And then practice, practice, practice. Through writing, speaking exercises.
It's all about taking something that feels, abstract and theoretical and making it concrete and real.
Okay. Then there's the challenge of understanding native English speakers. And I think this is something we all struggle with at some point. The speed, the accents, the slang. It can sometimes feel like you're listening to a totally different language altogether.
Oh, absolutely. And the advice here is really comprehensive, which, given the nature of this challenge, makes sense. It suggests actively listening to as many different types of English materials as you can, podcasts on different topics, movies, TV shows with different characters and accents, and even just everyday conversations if you have the opportunity. The more you expose yourself to different ways of speaking, the more you'll start to pick up on the nuances.
And it talks about this progression, starting with subtitles when you watch videos, and then gradually trying to wean yourself off them. That seems like a really practical, like step-by-step way to train your ear.
Exactly. The less you rely on those subtitles, the more confident you'll become in your listening skills. And it also introduces this technique called shadowing. Have you heard of this before?
I have.
So basically, you listen to a native speaker and you try to repeat what they're saying simultaneously. You're mimicking their pronunciation, their rhythm. It's a fantastic way to improve your pronunciation and get a feel for the natural flow of the language.
Right. And then another common obstacle is simply having a limited vocabulary. That frustrating feeling when you know what you want to say, but you just don't have the words to express it.
Yeah, it's like having a word on the tip of your tongue, but you just can't quite grasp it. So the material really stresses the importance of constantly building your vocabulary, daily reading, using flashcards, and really importantly, learning new words in context. So it's not just about memorizing definitions, it's about understanding how words are actually used in real life situations.
And then the active part of it, right?
Yeah.
Actually using those new words in sentences, in conversations, that feels like the real key to making them stick.
Absolutely. It's the difference between knowing a word passively and actually being able to use it actively.
Okay. Now, staying consistent. And I think this is a challenge with anything you're trying to do long term. It's easy to start with that initial burst of energy and excitement, and then over time, that can kind of fade away.
Yeah, we've all been there. But the book highlights this very important point. Set small, achievable goals. Don't try to do too much at once. Make English a daily habit, even if it's just for a short time each day. Listen to a song, watch a video, read an article. It all adds up.
And I love the suggestion of keeping a journal. So you can track your progress, celebrate those little victories, because it's so easy to forget how far you've come. Having a record of that can be really motivating.
It gives you that visual reminder of your effort, and that can be so encouraging, especially on days when you're feeling a little stuck.
Okay, so we've talked about the why. We've talked about some of the challenges, but now let's get really practical. How do we actually build a strong learning habit? And the book really stresses the power of those small daily efforts, showing how, over time, they can accumulate into something really significant.
It's the compound effect.
Exactly. It's not about those intense, marathon study sessions where you just cram as much as you can and then burn yourself out.
Exactly.
It's about finding ways to integrate English practice into your daily life in manageable and consistent ways.
Yeah, little and often.
So set realistic goals. right? Maybe learning a handful of new words each day, listening to a short podcast, writing a short paragraph. It feels a lot less daunting than having these huge, vague goals.
And each small win builds your confidence and keeps you moving forward.
Yeah. And I really like the suggestion of making English part of your environment, changing your phone's language settings, following English language social media accounts, watching English language media. It's about creating that immersive experience, even if you're not living in an English-speaking country.
I love that. It's about surrounding yourself with the language as much as you can.
Then there's the don't break the chain method. Using a calendar, something visual, to mark off each day you practice. That could be really motivating, can't it? Just seeing that chain of consistent effort.
Oh, yeah. It's almost like a game. You don't want to break your streak.
Exactly. And then finding an accountability partner or joining a language learning group. The book highlights this as a great way to stay motivated.
Having that shared experience, that support system, it makes a huge difference. It can really make you feel less like you're going through this alone.
And a really important point, and I know we touched on this earlier, make learning fun. If it feels like a chore, like a burden, you're not going to stick with it.
Absolutely. When you enjoy the process, when it's fun, you're more likely to keep going. You're more likely to learn, too.
Yeah. And then there's the idea of creating a routine. But a routine that fits your life, your schedule, it's got to be personalized and flexible.
That's so important. It has to be sustainable. It has to fit into your life.
And then remember to celebrate your progress. Acknowledge how far you've come.
Those little wins, they matter.
Okay, so let's talk about fun. Because as the book points out, when you enjoy learning, it becomes so much more sustainable in the long term. I'm thinking about the material you sent in, which often focuses on creative writing. And I wonder if we could, tailor some of these fun ideas with that in mind.
Absolutely. I love that connection because when you think about it, when learning is more like play, you're more likely to stick with it. You're more engaged. You're more receptive to the information.
Yeah, definitely. So there's gamifying your learning, using apps, websites, or even creating your own little language-based games. Things like flashcard challenges, maybe even writing prompts.
I love that.
Use those point systems, word association games. Just make it interactive, make it engaging.
It's about taking the pressure off and making it more playful.
Exactly. And then learning through movies, TV shows, videos. I think a lot of people already do this intuitively, but it's great to have it validated as a really effective method.
And thinking about your writing, you could analyze the dialogue in your favorite films, see how they craft the story. That's a great idea.
It's a way to learn vocabulary, grammar, and see how language is actually used in storytelling.
Plus, it's just fun.
Right. Music, too. Trying to understand the lyrics of songs you enjoy, singing along. It's a fun way to work on pronunciation, learn new vocabulary without feeling like you're studying.
Yeah, music has this amazing power to make things stick in your memory.
Totally agree. And then there's, engaging in conversations with language partners in online communities, maybe a community focused on writing or storytelling.
Right.
It takes the pressure off and makes practicing speaking more social, more enjoyable.
It's about connecting with others who share your interests.
Exactly. And then really think about your hobbies. If you love cooking, watch English language cooking shows. Maybe join an online English language writing group.
Make your passions part of your learning.
Exactly. And then set fun goals. Challenge yourself to watch an entire series in English. Try writing a short story.
I love that. It gives you something to work towards, and it keeps things interesting.
And again, celebrate those wins, no matter how small they seem. Did you understand a scene in a movie without subtitles? That's amazing. Did you write a paragraph and you're proud of it? Celebrate that.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've looked at some great strategies for the short term, but what about staying motivated over the long haul? Learning English, it's a journey, a marathon. There will be times when that initial spark starts to fade.
That's inevitable. And this is where, and the book emphasizes this so well, it's where revisiting your why becomes so important. Why did you start learning English in the first place? Keep that reason front and center. It's your fuel.
Yeah, it's your anchor. And the book also talks about keeping that journal that we talked about before, not just to celebrate wins, but to actually see how far you've come. It's easy to forget that sometimes, especially when you're feeling stuck.
Totally. It can be incredibly encouraging to look back and see that progress.
And I think this is a really important point. It's about embracing the journey itself, not just fixating on reaching that final destination of fluency.
Yeah. Find joy in the process. Celebrate every step.
Exactly. And sometimes, when you're feeling discouraged, seeing other people who have successfully learned English can be really inspiring.
Yeah. It shows you that it's possible. It can give you ideas and new strategies.
Absolutely. And create a routine, but make sure it's a varied routine. You don't want to get stuck in a rut. Keep things interesting. Keep things fresh.
Mix things up.
Exactly. And set those long-term goals, but break them down into smaller, more manageable steps.
Yeah.
Reward yourself for reaching those smaller goals.
It gives you something to work towards consistently.
Yeah. And don't be afraid of setbacks. They're going to happen. The book really emphasizes this. They're a natural part of the process.
Don't let them discourage you. Learn from them. Keep going.
Yeah, I think that's a really important takeaway. And then stay curious. Explore different facets of the language, the culture, the history,
Keep that spark alive.
and celebrate those milestones. Big or small, every achievement deserves to be acknowledged. Now, the book also goes into some really specific strategies for overcoming the fear of speaking and dealing with that feeling of slow progress. For that fear of speaking, it really emphasizes the importance of practice, 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 and finding supportive, low-pressure environments to do that.
That's key. Find a place where you feel comfortable making mistakes.
And when it comes to that feeling of slow progress, the book suggests shifting your focus. Look back at how far you've already come. Break down your goals into smaller, more achievable steps. Give yourself a sense of accomplishment and momentum.
Sometimes we're so focused on what we haven't achieved yet that we forget to appreciate how far we've come.
Exactly. And it uses this really great analogy of planting seeds and nurturing their growth. Real growth takes time. Be patient. Be kind to yourself.
It's a process.
Yeah. And a really important point that the book stresses is the power of a positive mindset. Believe in your ability to learn. View mistakes as opportunities to grow. Stay curious.
Your mindset is so powerful. A positive attitude can make all the difference.
And then it goes on to talk about daily immersion strategies, really practical ways to surround yourself with English, like changing the language settings on your devices and engaging with English language media, even just listening to English audio while you're doing everyday tasks.
It's about making English a part of your daily life, even in small ways.
Exactly. And then it revisits that crucial cycle of tracking your progress and celebrating your wins. Remember to document your journey and acknowledge your achievement.
Those little wins, they add up.
Okay, so to bring it all together, it seems like success in learning English really comes down to consistency. Those small efforts you make every day. Remember your why, celebrate every step forward, and value your perseverance.
It's a journey, and like any journey, there will be ups and downs. But as long as you keep moving forward, you're making progress.
Absolutely. Every effort you make counts. Every new word, every conversation, every step forward, it's a victory. Remember, you are doing great. Those challenges, they're just part of the process. Stay consistent, immerse yourself, and most importantly, believe in yourself. You can do this.
I love that. Enjoy the journey. It's not just about reaching that final goal. It's about the connections you make, the growth you experience. Stay curious, stay motivated, and keep believing in yourself. You've got this.